Speech, I invite the leader of opposition here.
I think what's lacking from side government is actually analyzing the incentives that Hollywood has in order for them to even create these forms of representations at the end of the day. Then who exactly are their target audiences at the end of the day? We think that we will be the first to analyze these things. Before going on to that, let's just deal with side OG. Understand that this debate is an actor debate. And as an Asian individual born and raised in Asia, that how exactly are you actively harmed by these particular representations from a country that is millions of miles away from you? Especially when we would like to argue that oftentimes these are representations that would benefit those Asians who are living in your Western diasporas, particularly that these are the kind of people who need these representatives the most, and we would take it at the end of the day, right? Also, when it comes to your Asians per se, when it comes to these particular harms in itself, they can minimize it by also having local industries that create the kind of films that you want to, especially films that are oftentimes the most closest to your particular being and your particular culture. Therefore, you can self-actualize through those particular things and build your identities around those things. Also, when it comes, and also the ability for them to also say that apparently all this whitewashing is generally very harmful, but we also present to you that this is a better way and much more strategic way in order for us to create incentives for Hollywood to care more, especially when they don't, especially when oftentimes these are people who already probably have assimilate and create like a multifaceted version of their own cultures. That's why they need these things even more. And they also keep talking about how apparently this is doing them justice. But exactly how? How exactly will this be justice? How will they exactly accept the kind of representation that Hollywood creates? And why will they change even if they see that there is a common, if there is no particular commonality at the end of the day? Because Hollywood only creates things that are much more profitable at the end of the day. But before that, Yashu.
The problem is that Asian Americans pretend to be authentically Asian. If they were choosing to just be Asian American and portray Asians in the Western diaspora, we have no issue with it. They are pretending to represent us.
That's the thing, right? Look, even if oftentimes there are trends of them representing people from that particular diaspora, meaning your Asian Americans per se. But even in circumstances where they represent your Asians in general, we still feel there's a form of trickle-down benefits towards your Asian communities at the end of the day, especially when they also have never told us the incentive of Hollywood, which creates big movies, to have an incentive to take, for example, some random actor from some random country in order for them to make a buck. So what is this debate exactly about? It's about whether we can achieve proper representation and who exactly we prioritize. Our end goal from SIO is representation that is slow but bit by bit. We create empathy for those who need it the most, especially our Asian Americans themselves. That we believe that the dilution of their particular identity in the forms that they want to say is so harmful, we still think there's an inherent benefit to it at the end of the day. So who makes these films? Often these are Hollywood films, right? They are oftentimes Western, and they are made for your Western diaspora. It means that oftentimes Asia already has its own film industries anyway, where they have to make it as true and as close as their culture. But Hollywood movies are oftentimes predominantly white and are harmful. And this is harmful because Western societies oftentimes aren't all white. Your POCs still exist. This means that Western identities oftentimes reject anything that isn't white. They think that anything POC is strange and foreign and therefore inferior to their own culture. That you have to be American first and only then Asian. And by American, oftentimes it's only Caucasian, like your Caucasian cultures, for example. It is helpful for your own Asian Americans themselves when they can conceptualize their own main identities, when they feel like they have to reject aspects of their own identity. That's why Crazy Rich Asians is an inherent benefit at the end of the day, because there are actually Asians who study overseas. You probably would much more relate to your Teacher Zuangzi fresh off the boat, right? That's exactly the kind of thing that you don't need your particular Asians themselves to be as Asian as possible. That there is completely this, oftentimes Western world completely disregards to human beings as complex and multifaceted beings and that culture is never stagnant. They feel out of place. They have like body image issues. They have problems accepting values that their parents passed down from that. But the lack of representation is also harmful when your white people themselves don't understand these people, because they cannot compute that people can be Asian and American at the end of the day. They hold on to stereotypes that actively harm your Asians that are living in your Western countries. They are ostracized for bringing spicy Indian food into the cafeteria, for example. People think that they are odd. All of this affects the interaction that these people have with your privileged majority at the end of the day. And the Asian American representation, for example, like Eddie Huang and Fresh of the World, or whatever, whoever is in Crazy Rich Asians, this fixes the idea that you are never a local or an immigrant in itself, as compared to having a proper Asian that like doing the most complete, closely Asian representation that you can have. Oftentimes, your white counterparts will be turned off by it because they think it's so strange in itself, right? Because their ideas of Asians in general are already so small to the point in which it harms your Asians who are living in your Western countries at the end of the day, which we think it's much more better for you to, in a sense, pander to them, because we think that it is better for them to do this. Because at least this fixes the idea that you are never exactly a local, that you're just an immigrant. This is harmful because we believe that they can never integrate, that they are different, and the kind of us versus them is the kind of values that fuel society to be much more discriminatory at the end of the day. What about Asian characters? Look, we are okay with it also because it creates a palatable version and we will take it. White counterparts think that cultures are strange. This would create a sense of commonality, for example, and this can create an incentive for them to know more about their culture. At least they heard about Singapore or something like that, right? And they have more of an incentive to put a person like Henry Golding, for example, as compared to like some random like Singaporean actor, for example, because they know that at least this can create some form of a profit, right? And only then can this translate to incentives for Hollywood to get more proper representation when they see that the market in itself is actually profitable, right? Because they cannot prove to us whether Hollywood can truly make a buck if they actually do these kinds of things, right? Because like Crazy Rich Asians, only then will Hollywood see that, for example, that you have to be Asian, that these are other kind of things that can create better incentives for people to do better at the end of the day. We think that when it comes to Asians themselves, we feel like the Asians in your Western diasporas are oftentimes that needs these things the most. And it is okay for them to also, in a sense, relate to a much more banana character at the end of the day. Because oftentimes kind of discourses that you have, for example, in Fresh of the Boat, it's kind of discussions that talk about the balance, like how do we then balance and take particular aspects of culture, like from Chinese culture and also American culture at the end of the day. We still think that is a valid discussion that your Asian Americans themselves can go through in order for them to conceptualize their own identity. Because they're only the ones who will only fight for your Asians. Well, your Asian Asians are not actively harmed anyways by the representations of these films in Hollywood. And your Asian Americans are the ones who constantly need your white counterparts to change their perception of who they are. That they are probably more banana, for example, and that's fine. Or if they connect more with the roots when it comes to the stories that their grandmothers tell them before they sleep, all of this is fine. And we think they're never be proud of this.
And then the leader of opposition, next up by the Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
I love how she started by saying that this was an actor debate. And this debate is about Asians living in Asia that were born and raised in Asia, and therefore Hollywood doesn't really affect us. Yet at the same time, then spend the next 6 minutes telling us why Asian Americans were affected and somehow we were supposed to care. As an Asian who lives in Asia, who's born and raised in Asia, why do I care if an Asian American is integrated into the US? It's their problem, their experience, and their lifestyles that should be represented, and we are perfectly okay with them fighting for that representation, that diversity, and that involvement. The point OG makes in this debate is that the Asian experience is not the same as the Asian American experience, and we must actively be willing to push that forward into the media sphere to say that these are two separate experiences and deserve two separate forms of representation in the media industry. It is unclear why, as an Asian, I need to care about Asian American experiences. The second thing that we need to talk about is this Hollywood incentive. It's exactly the point she makes, right? That we don't really need to care that much about accurate Hollywood interpretations if the point is that we must look up to Hollywood. What we want is for them to not portray us inaccurately or to portray us in a way that affects ourselves. We think that Asian Americans are perfectly fine in being able to portray their own lifestyles. What we would like is for them to not call themselves Asian because they are not Asian at all, and they have their own experiences and their own lifestyles, and we'll talk about that in a bit. The problem is when they pretend to be us and claim our representation for themselves. If the claim is that Hollywood will never put in an Asian into their own business, we believe as Asians that we should start not caring about Hollywood and not thinking of Hollywood as the pinnacle of media or as the pinnacle of movie making. And instead, as mentioned in Prime Minister that didn't get a response to, that we should start looking at our local industries of Bollywood or Hong Kong film or Chinese film as the pinnacle of our representation, so that Hollywood takes notice and doesn't allow for it to get past that they are the pinnacle of our representation, because we have better versions of our representation that are not there. We're going to do three things in this speech. One, we're going to talk about what happens during upbringing and why particularly Asian Americans are not anywhere near being Asian. Two, what happens when people whose only connection to a culture is their skin color represent our culture. And three, what happens when we reject and why that rejection is powerful. Let's look at what happens during upbringing. The end goal of this is simple. It influences every single part of your understanding and your culture. Because your friends and your neighbors as you grow up dictate what is socially acceptable to you. Your education system tells you what your history is and the dominant language that's accepted in the community. Your relationships, your interactions, and your work determine your ethical code and your morality. Therefore, your upbringing and the community that you live in determines your understanding of an entire culture and an entire value. If you are raised in a world that is completely Western, your only connection with Asia is your skin color. The fact that there might be some Asian customs here or there in your household does not mean you have any understanding of what it means to be Asian beyond the fact that your skin is either yellow or brown. This means that if you portray yourself as being Asian in an Asian scene within a Hollywood movie, you are doing a disservice to your entire community back in Asia by suggesting that you are their representation or that you represent them fairly. What happens when people whose only connection to a culture is their skin color that represents that culture? One, they let stereotypes fly. These are the people who don't see when stereotypes are being placed on a culture, because they don't see that culture as anything but those stereotypes, because they were exposed to the culture just as much as your average white person. This results in not being able to actually be able to create nuanced identities within the Hollywood structure. This is not just about actors. This is about script writers, storytellers, narrative drivers, your producers, your directors, your costumers, your hair and makeup individuals, all of whom add towards creating an authentic experience to Asia. If their arguments that they want these individuals to be integrated into the community, you want people to accept Asia, then part of that acceptance is being able to portray them accurately, being able to have the authentic experience of what it means to be Asia in order to create that outcome. They don't achieve that when the only people who represent Asia are people who don't understand Asia and only know Asia from the Western lens and from a Western purview. This results in an inability to actually get the kind of integration, even if that was an outcome that they want to achieve on that side. Before we go into what happens when we reject,
So if we don't care about Hollywood, if we shift the paradigm of entertainment to Asia, then why would the Americans and the Western media ever care about Asian authenticity?
Look, the point is that right now Hollywood puts itself on this pedestal of representation, that they represent all the diverse cultures that exist in the world, that they are the best movie-making industry in the world, that they know what our cultures are because they've created characters or they have people in their industry that are also yellow in color in their skin. These are individuals who don't represent Asia but claim to be representing Asia. What we do on our side when we say, look, Hollywood doesn't represent us accurately, we reject Asian American representations of Asia. Correct portrayals of Asia are seen in Bollywood, they're seen in Hong Kong films, they're seen in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, whatever it is. There are films and perspectives out there that portray Asian authenticity properly, and those are our Asian representations, not the Asian American representation that we see now. That's when you create better discourse. Which brings us to that last thing. What happens when we reject? Sure, in a best case scenario, we wouldn't have to reject and they would give us our representation anyway. The problem now is that people don't see the difference. Asian Americans are Asians to a lot of people in the West. The difference is not clear to them. What happens in our world when we reject is that we open up the knowledge that the experiences lived by an Asian American is not the same as the experiences lived by an Asian. Sure, in the first 5, 10 years, people are going to be like, no, Asian Americans are sufficient. We don't want to give Asians representation whatsoever. But when we push the idea that these are two separate cultures, they are two separate identities, and they are two separate lived experiences, that's when you have the ability to push for some representation, even in small spheres, step by step. In their world, the proper authentic Asian experience will never get represented because we're not allowed to reject the fact that Asian Americans don't represent us. The suggestion that Asian Americans don't authentically represent Asians will never come out on their side because they will constantly have to accept that those are accurate portrayals of us. On our side, we allow for these individuals to step up and say, no, those representations are ones we reject. They're not the lives we led. They're not the experiences that we should experience, and this is how we should be portrayed, allowing for the opportunity for people who want to portray authentic Asian experiences to have that. That's why Criminal Minds Beyond Borders will no longer have everyone speaking in Chinese in a Singapore context. That's how you won't have your Crazy Rich Asians that was filmed in Malaysia but it's apparently Singaporean. This is how you achieve the ability to ensure accurate portrayal of authenticity. The only way to do that is to reject current portrayals.
And then the Deputy Prime Minister and by the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
Honorable panel, during the media press tour of Crazy Rich Asians, they had multiple interviews with these actors. They asked Constance Wu what she knows about Singapore. They asked about her interactions with Singapore, what she knows about Asia in general. They asked the same thing to Michelle Yeoh. They asked the same thing to Henry Golding. What does this mean? The ability for them to start as an act and to start and act as a conduit for conversation and discussion exists. The ability for them to become the entry point for the discussions and the proper representation of actual Asians. That is a debate that we want to talk about. I think it's problematic that side opening government was to argue exact truisms of just racism bad, discrimination bad, without telling us how exactly you will get the Western media to actually represent correctly. We tell you, yes, they are bad, but how do you change that? You can't just say we want justice and then doesn't explain to us the analysis of how these things happen. We tell you that the treatment and discrimination of Western Asian people more often than not trickles down because the discrimination that Western Asians receive, even though they have the same value of commonality, even though they have the same value of an idea of similar lived experiences with the Western people, and still some value of similarity with the Asian community. Like, you can't just ignore the fact that Asians who are raised in first or second generation families don't have some value of an Asian community. They still live with an Asian community. They still live with a family that speaks Asian, any Asian languages. They still go to the American Chinatowns whatsoever. They do have that level of a connection. We think, therefore, as you have more Western Asian commonality, as you have more Western Asian representation, then they are the entry point for actual Asians within this debate. I'll explain that later. Before that, a few other points of responses. Because they told us that people can never have any value of representation, that people should never, that they want to have a shift of a paradigm towards Bollywood and China without explaining to us how exactly this happens. The ability for you to explain to us the value of how you shift the idea and how you tell the Western media and the Western world to shift the value, that needs proper analysis before you can tell that. But even then, we tell you, you need the ability to get them to actually care about you the moment you want to have that change. And we see the moment you reject these portrayals, that's the moment where you see, as an Asian American community, as the actual Asian community, that you reject this representation. They have no interest in Western Asian representation. What that means is, you to them, they no longer see you as a proper market. They no longer see you as someone to pander towards. They no longer see you as someone who needs that value of representation. I'll extend to Sila's argumentation and also add on a new argumentation on how exactly celebrities aren't just actors, aren't just people who are in sets, they're also personalities that helps work as a conduit. Before that, yes.
So because of Crazy Rich Asian, the image of Asian American is now basically Chinese. Why would Hollywood have an incentive to show South Asians, for instance, on the big screen?
The identity of Asians started as Chinese. That's true. In the 70s and 80s, whenever you say Asian America, they'll think of Bruce Lee. They'll think of Rumble in the Bronx. They'll think of whatever whatever thing Michelle Yeoh plays, even though she's born and raised mostly in the UK, same with Henry Golding. What does that mean? This means we are currently seeing trends of more and more Asian representation in the media. You have people like Fan Bingbing playing character in X-Men. You have more and more actors like Donnie Yen, for example, or Priyanka Chopra being able to enter the Western media identity. What does that mean? This means as we have more Western Asian actors speaking out and is able to become is able to discuss the idea of being Asian or discuss the idea of being different. This looks like actors like, for example, this is like Eddie Huang be able to speak about being an Asian in the American cooking community, or people like Aziz Ansari being able to discuss the values of being Indian in America. What that creates is, it shows that there is a market, there is a target that they can target towards. I will tell you that this is absolutely important, because the moment you create that market, this shows an incentive for America to then target towards these people. This then shows an ability for people from the actual Asian communities. God, this is so convoluted. The actual Asian communities to be able to enter these communities. Why is that important? Because we tell you that in status quo, actors aren't just actors, they're also personalities. It's important that they speak up. It's important that they open up issues and discuss. But in OG's world, where they reject everything, what is the incentive for VHS, for E, for example, to ever talk to Fan Bingbing? What is their incentive to ever talk to any Malaysian actor just because they reject these communities? We tell you, there is no incentive. There's no money to be made. What then do you get on outside the house? On outside the house, you're able to slowly ease these people in, slowly get representation bit by bit. The more Aziz Ansaris you get, the more either Indian or Asian actors in America you get, the ability for you to find points of commonality and empathy exists. These people still go through the multitudes level of discrimination. They're still attacked for having different cultures, for even eating with their hands or eating with chopsticks. These people do face similar points of discrimination. These people do face similar points of questioning. And we tell you, the moment you open up that level of questioning, you can start and speak up on the racist rhetorics that does happen within these movies. Aziz Ansari, after the creation of Master Land, for example, discusses about the racist rhetoric that the Western media has about Indian people, and that can then lead to more South Asian actors. The same applies to East Asian actors. Why is this absolutely different? Because we tell you that there is a vastly different lived experience for actual Asians, that they do have a lingual and cultural barrier of commonality with Americans. But the moment you can toe the line between what is Asian, what is not Asian, that is the moment where your Priyanka Chopras or your Michelle Yeohs can enter, when your Fan Bingbings can start to discuss, hey, this is what being Chinese is like. Hey, this is what changing your ideas or changing your perception of what Asia is. What we do outside the house is we change the abilities for people to empathize and understand foreign cultures. We change the ideas that these Asians are Asians overall. They're human beings that do have some value of commonality. They tell us that this guy is similar to the other Asian I know because they still share the same values. And throughout that shared value, you have a second level of commonality. throughout that shared value, you reduce the levels of discrimination that does happen towards actual Asians, because these people are no longer seen as the dehumanized savages doing whatever stuff they do in Asia. These people are now seen as similar people to their neighbors, similar people to the actors that they see on TV every day, and for that, we are proud to oppose.
By the member of government.
The interest of the Asian community isn't to pander to the Western gaze or to win over the approval of the trappings of Western colonialism. That is to say, the key problem in today's debate is that only for you to succeed as an Asian is to acquire approval from Hollywood, to acquire approval from the West, and that is the manifestation of cultural colonialism. This is the key problem in today's debate that opening opposition doesn't seem to understand. It is a means of choosing, and how does this rejection necessarily lie? It means choosing to watch your own country's films instead of, investing in your own cultural capitals, as opposed to automatically assuming that your actors are incompetent, your singers are incompetent, your sportsmen will always be inferior to that of people in other countries. So that people in your country don't have to go overseas in order to become successful as an Asian, as someone from your own country. We give you examples, many different examples that exist in the current status quo. Actors like Karen May or actors like Sam Willows, who can only acquire success after going to LA to shoot videos with Babyface and Remy Jackson, where they were previously treated like trash in Singapore because people don't see them as legitimate, because they are able to court the approval of the Western imperialistic gaze of what cultural capital should look like in today's society. We don't have people like the inventors of Razer, the biggest gaming company in the world right now, was not able to secure any sort of funding in Singapore, because Singaporeans think that gaming isn't something that can exist in Singapore, and the only way he was able to do this was to go to Silicon Valley and invest in Razer as a brand. And the way this systemic problem that side opposition fails to look at today is the fact that acceptance is problematic, because it results in the creation of a neo-colonialist false consciousness that oppresses Asians that live within our society. So, before I move to analysis, let's clarify a few things, right? Firstly, that there's no such thing as taking the middle ground in today's debate. Because in a battle of cultural narratives in today's debate, there's only an option of accepting or rejecting a certain culture, right? Because this culture is fundamentally a zero-sum game when it comes to cultural narratives. So in my speech, I'm going to talk about a few things, right? Firstly, how this results in the creation of, firstly, what is the act of symbolic violence that exists in today's current society, and which I kind of already touched on. Secondly, how this results in the creation of false consciousness of neo-colonialism within Asians currently, and thirdly, how this results in harm in Asians community in 3 tiers, right? Firstly, how it results in less incentive to look towards your own cultural, cultural legitimacy. Secondly, how it silences Asian minorities, and thirdly, how it internalizes narratives of inferiority within Asian people of our society. So first here, right, what is this act of symbolic cultural violence that exists, right? That is the act of accepting the Hollywood narratives are the ultimate narratives that exist in today's society, right? That the only kind of approval you can get are those from the West. That your own people are never legitimate. It doesn't matter whether I filmed a really good movie in my country. I don't get any sort of approval if the West doesn't approve of it. And we think this symbolic violence ultimately hurts people, right? Because it has very real impacts on people, such as the ability to get a job, such as the ability to become successful as a career as an entrepreneur within your country, right? We think this kind of harms don't just apply to individuals because they can't succeed. It applies to countries as well. But so entrepreneurs can't get big, they can't get funding to become famous and stuff like that. That is where a country loses any sort of systemic ability to create cultural, social, or economic capital within a nation. Because it becomes a systemic sort of self-oppression that exists within these countries. And that's the ultimate harm we want to prevent Asian countries from being inflicted on. So how does this necessarily result in the creation of false consciousness? Which is the question the opening didn't answer, which we're going to answer now, which is how exactly Asians are going to react to the very narratives that are being put forth by these people, right? Firstly, we think that the act of accepting such a narrative internalizes the narrative that Asian culture is inferior within current society, right? And we think that this occurs doubly pernicious because of the neo-colonial aspects of this. That the current cultural colonizers that exist are the Asian Americans that exist in this many different societies, which is a far subtler kind of colonization that is white people will say that we are better than you. Why is this thing uniquely important into this way? We think it's uniquely important because Asians, after waves on liberalization, are at a critical juncture of deciding what their identity is within the global community right now, right? And we think if this identity is captured by the white hegemony that exists in current status quo, then there's no other instances in which Asians can create their own identity of what their culture and what conception of Asian identity truly is in the current debate we face today. So moving on to harms, yes sir.
Asia doesn't have one particular identity because it's like Indian, Chinese,
Yes, but here's the problem when Hollywood chooses to create identity for you, right? They tell you that Chinese people are the only kinds of Asians that are cool and popular in this society. They tell you that all Chinese people are rich. It doesn't matter whether you're poor or you're Indian. The only people who matter in Asia are the Chinese. I'll go into that later. So we think that this pigeonholing or stereotype occurs in many different ways. And this is how again we differentiate ourselves from opening, right? Which is even in the best case scenarios where Asians are glorified, a form of internalized harm still occurs. Why so? It pigeonholes Asians into a kind of a kind of like superiority perhaps with regard to math and sciences, and a kind of inferiority when it comes to linguistic like abilities, literature, histories, and math. So for example, in Crazy Rich Asians, Richard Chu being an economics professor is termed as the most Asian thing you can do in current society. Why is this problematic? It is problematic on two tiers. Firstly, it creates a systemic perception that Asian culture is always inferior to the West, because the only things that Asian can do better than white people is math and science. So this creates an ingrained sense of inferiority within all Asians in societies. Second tier of harm. We think Hollywood has a perverse incentive to perpetuate these sorts of cultural inferiorities that exist. Right? We give you an example of how during the Cold War, Hollywood was the kind of cultural capital that creates the perception that all Russians are shitty people, that all Eastern European people are terrible people you shouldn't trust in current society. We think that Hollywood in this case is doing the exact same thing, right? By perpetuating a culture of Western culture and social dominance to kind of cement the kind of power that the West has over the East. So how does this result in harm? We think firstly it results in harm because if you want to pursue like things such as literature or things such as humanities as Asian, you're systemically discriminated against based on the kinds of stereotypes you look at. But let's go even bigger, right? Look at the macro picture, again something that our opening didn't talk about. This results in less incentive for countries to look at their own cultural identities as a country in the current status quo. Right? We give it the counter example of China, which is like a country that's actively rejecting Western portrayals of their own identity. It's kind of like the only Asian country in the current status quo who's able to excavate and create their own kinds of heritages that precedes the colonial era. We give it a counter example of Singapore, a country that kind of panders to the West. Right? Well, history literally ends where Stanford Raffles as a British colonizer comes to Singapore. We don't give a shit about the Mahapajit Empire that exists in the past, the Gupta empires that exist in the past, the kinds of unique, rich intercultural existences of Singapore before the creation of Western colonization in the region. Secondly, within this silences Asian minorities across class and race. We didn't raise that Hollywood has no incentive to portray unpopular races because they're pandering to existing simplistic stereotypes that exist within the world right now, right? So at the point in time when other Asians are otherized, Vietnamese don't exist, South Indians don't exist. We think this creates a monolithic entity of what the East looks like to the West, and it creates an Occidental impression that fundamentally otherizes all other kinds of Asians that exist within society. This means that it directly debases the very cultural capitals and social capitals of your fellow neighbors in the eyes of the West, which fundamentally leads to the entire problem of colonization and lack of acceptance that exists in our society today. Secondly, we think this also results in internalized inferiority that exists, right? Where we construct a dominant narrative within Asians themselves. The only road to success is that of the migrant narrative, of going to a foreign country and becoming rich through hard work, which is something that doesn't apply to most Asian communities. For example, Chinese in Bumiputra, Malaysia, or even like Chinese in Singapore who are systemically discriminated against, right? We think in many of these cases, the road to success isn't that of hard work, but that of fighting systemic injustice within systems. So they internalize their own sense of inferiority within these countries, which further oppresses negative underclasses of Asian people within their own societies. Lastly, we think this also marginalizes existing Asian underclasses that exist, right? So for example, poorer Chinese within Asian communities, even like that of Singapore. When Crazy Rich Asians came out, entire Singapore was mad about it because they don't represent the true existence of Singapore. The fact that we have HDB flats, that people still live in poverty, that hidden homeless still exists in Singapore. And so with the Western construction of Asian identities, there's of rich, sparkling cities, it is where the poor people in Asia get otherized, whereas majorities get silenced, and when people don't get to create their own sense of what identity is, and the West gets to colonize us. That is a terrible thing, we don't stand for that.
As a member of government, I invite the member of opposition. Here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so confused because at this point in the debate, I literally do not know what the crap side government in this debate is going to get by rejecting these individuals. Sure, you can list, CJ can list down to me all these harms that you get by, I don't know, some false representation or whatever, but if you're not going to come up and tell me some kind of alternative or what happens the moment that you reject in some, I don't know, magical problem suddenly, or you get better Asian representation happens under your side of the house, I don't see how you're able to win the debate and that sense, ladies and gentlemen, right? So what am I going to do basically in my speech? Number one, I'm going to show to you properly why exactly the moment a Asian supports a Western Asian in this particular manner and supports this idea of this Asian within Hollywood, you get better representation of individuals and of this culture in of itself, right? Before I move on to those, to that substantive, let's talk to you about a few rebuttals coming out from side government, right? From side government. Number one, let's first talk to you and cater to this idea of how Asian Americans somehow pretend to represent us, and somehow that's bad for our culture, right? I think number one, when you take into the context of Asian Americans and how these individuals first moved to the US or first moved to any of these countries, I think it's extremely important for these individuals to not be seen as indifferent, for these individuals to not seem as I don't know, the Aboriginals or probably the different people of that country, right? The reason why these individuals and these Asians needed to somehow dilute their culture and somehow try to assimilate with this country, these people, these individuals of this country, is so that they can find some form of acceptance in order for them to properly want to represent their culture at the end of the day. Basically, yeah, sure, you can knock all you want, but you're not getting anything under your side of the house, right? But why is this extremely important in this representation and this assimilation is one that is extremely important in this particular step? I think number one is this idea that the moment that you support these sort of Asians in that particular country for being the Asian, like however the heck they want to depict that particular part of Asia or their culture of Asia, I think that's the moment that you at the very least get some people to want to even try to relate to you or try to understand what your culture is about at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. The comparative is that the moment that you reject these individuals or these Asian Americans or these individuals who, like, quote unquote, don't properly or don't appropriately interpret your culture and your representation as Asian, that's the moment that you are more likely to turn people off from even wanting to engage with you in the first place, or even wanting to learn and recognize what your culture is at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, right? But this extends even more to this argument of when you're talking about Hollywood, right? Because from side government, when you talk from side government, the alternative that they wanted was to somehow get local industries to get Hollywood to want to properly represent them, because somehow they have that kind of representation. They have that proper representation, right? I think number one, this is already a false accusation made, because even like local industries like Bollywood, even your local industries in Malaysia, don't properly represent your culture at the end of the day, right? Because if you see Malaysian movies, the only thing they talk about are gangsters and gun shootings and, I don't know, your rumpits at the end of the day. And this isn't the proper culture that is represented by Asia or by that particular Asian country, right? But secondly, right, I don't think the moment that you suddenly reject these Asian actors, the moment you suddenly reject these Asian actors, suddenly you get you get Hollywood to suddenly want to pander to the East even more, right? I don't see why that analysis is there, right? I think the moment that you reject these Asian actors who are trying, at the very least, to portray the culture and portray the sentiments that you want as an Asian culture, I think that's the moment that you disincentivize Hollywood and disincentivize your actors and your screenwriters sit down to want to even cast these individuals into their movies, into the movies, right? What is the harm to this, right? I think probably in two folds. The moment that you reject these actors, and Hollywood directors and writers no longer want to roll them into some kind of part, some kind of play. I think this is the moment that your Hollywood actors are more likely to want to get your white person to play your Asian at the Asians at the end of the day. Some like Scarlett Johansson playing all kinds of these minority roles, right? But even in the worst case scenario, rather what happens is that you regress the progression that your Asian culture and your Asian society has gotten from movies like Crazy Rich Asians, which opened up an avenue for individuals and for the whole world to understand what exactly is Asian culture and how exactly you get Asian culture at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Sure.
Priyanka Chopra could not get a break in Hollywood until she whitewashed herself and spoke in an American accent for Quantico. How does this help your acceptance of common Asian values when she had to strip herself of her Asian values before she became successful?
I think probably you have things the existence of even Priyanka Chopra within Hollywood was one thing that got people to want to learn more about about Asian culture and how Asian culture is portrayed, right? But I think it's more than just that, right? I think the moment that you have an Asian within a sphere like Hollywood that is able to dominate, able to spread to a large amount of society, or a large part of the world. This is where you also have things like PC culture enabling individuals to want to learn more and want to understand what exactly is this culture about, right? Because the freaking wedding that Priyanka Chopra and even like Nick, whatever Nick Jonas, that's the dude, that white dude, yeah. When they got together, right, they had this sort of Indian ceremony, and people wanted to know what exactly was the background of Priyanka Chopra. What exactly are these particular things happening? And that's only existed when you have the support, when you give support to people like Priyanka Chopra, when you give support to whatever the actors or whoever the actors within Crazy Rich Asians were, and that's when you get that's the moment that you get individuals to want to come down and want to understand what exactly, or want to learn what exactly are the depictions of this Asian culture, right? But even so, right, even if even if they properly misrepresent, that doesn't mean that you need to reject these actors in order for you to have some kind of form of discussion in order for people to understand what exactly these cultures are about, right? I think that turns off individuals from even wanting to engage with you in the first place. But secondly, I think what you even the better thing that you get is that you're still able to get your discussions online through Reddit, through Twitter, through Facebook feeds as to what exactly is or whether or not this is the true representation of that culture in the first place, right? But ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand that the most important thing right now is the support that you give to an Asian actor that you never had before, because Asian actors previously never had any good representation for them to want to represent the culture that they had within Asia, right? Asian actors from Bollywood, Asian actors from Malaysia, Asian actors from Singapore in of itself never had the chance to even penetrate the Hollywood market without the support of individuals on the ground, without the support of their viewers, and without the support of their fans, in order for them to be able to enter into that market, to talk about what the Asian culture is, but to talk about what the Asian identity is. And I think for all those reasons, I'm proud to propose some side closing opportunity here.
I'd like the member of opposition. I would like to invite the government rep and the round of Sure.
There's this ending which like it will make me the meme of YNC, so like why not? Don't make me laugh, because I swear I will. Cool, may I begin? Colonialism isn't dead. It lives on in our minds when we accept inaccurate Western portrayals as legitimate. It lives on when we look at Crazy Rich Asians and we cry or excited because we thought that the story that appears there was our story being shown on the big screen. It lives on when the only way for Malaysian and Korean acts like Sheila Hamzah and BTS to get success is to go to LA and work out with producers like Nick Jonas, for instance. We think that the rejection of the guise of Western legitimacy is what we provide to you exclusively at closing government, and this is the only way for us to break away from the Western standard of colonialism that exists right now. It is only when we choose to watch the new Jack Liu movie about national service in Singapore and not Crazy Rich Asian, that is when we are best able to achieve the outcomes we want. I'm going to first deal with use extension and then or lack of extension, and move on to OO and explain to you what our extension was the most important one in this debate. Let's first deal with CO. I don't think they have much of an extension, but they make some nice points. I'm going to rebut that. First thing they say, what do you get when we reject? I think VHA gives you some material as to what you get, but then go through what Buko gives you in extension, crucially, because I think that because the extension was more grounded in your regard. Because we have done this debate from the lens of the Asian who's going to watch this kind of stuff. I think VHA's things are pretty generic in that regard. What we do specifically was two things. Number one, knowing that your position as an Asian means that you can succeed in more than just things like STEM subjects, for instance. Because when you look at Asian Americans right now, when Richard Chu says things like, being an econs professor is the most Asian thing I can do, your perception of success is defined as being that econs professor. We reject it and we can reclaim the narrative specifically. But what does this look like? Because in a world where everyone is going to the West to get success, when we reject the narrative, it means things like more money for small medium enterprises in places like Singapore, in places like Malaysia, which means that mamas, for instance, get more money to like cook things like Indomie. For instance, I think those things are comparatively better vis-a-vis to like some nebulous outcome on that side of the house. Next, they say local movies may not be the best representation of Asian culture. I think this is true, but here are three structural reasons, but even the worst case with that representation is that, first of all, I think that even if it's really bad at Malays again, so at least it's relatable to the local audience, vis-a-vis to not being relatable in the first place. Especially like if you are like South Asia, you don't see like a South Asian character or like Crazy Rich Asian, I'm not really sure how you relate to the story in the first place. But second of all, it's a question of ownership, right? Because in the status quo, what happens now is that we have the perception that Malays are gangsters because that is the common stereotype that exercise in the status quo, and the stereotype continues to exist in the status quo because we are dependent, because Hollywood has dependent to those stereotypes exclusively. When we get ownership, we are able to reframe and we're able to change the stereotype importantly. There are things like, for example, showing like, I don't know, too martyr and stuff like that. I think that those things comparatively are better. But lastly, to the extent that we don't watch Western films and we watch local films, the money that you make goes to local producers, which means better into the economy, means the more SMEs and stuff like that. I think those things are particularly good. The next does mean they say, like, you get more discouraged. They say that almost argument, let's deal first with O. I think what O basically gives you was that you can get more bridges of empathy, you get triggered on effect, that's a good thing, and like some understanding is better than no understanding. I will concede all of those things are possibly true. I'm not sure what is probable, given as we concede in APU, right? The current image of Asian American is Chinese. That has literally been the image since the 1970s. It's not changing in the 2010s right now. But more importantly, right, I'm not really sure why we should have that discussion on the grounds of the age of the Western Asian in a regard, because the Western Asian narrative and the struggle that they go through is totally different what we went through in Asia. They didn't have to go through things like decolonization. They didn't have to go through things like what do you say, like feet up down, for instance, right? There are unique lived experiences that these Western Asians cannot claim to have. They cannot represent the full experience or lived experiences of Asian Asians in that regard. So even if you get some understanding, I would suggest to you that we have things like Jack Ma, for instance, but like we're just taking a really big intern in the economy right now. There's an incentive for people to want to know and want to reach out to the connection with these people in the status quo anyway. So that's the thing that opening up the benefit is exclusive in this debate. Before I go on, sure.
So if you reject Western Asian representation, how exactly will we be able to reclaim the exact narrative when the West don't care to entwine with you?
I think the way to reclaim that is to say, like, one, I don't give a damn about what the West says. What matters most is me as Asian Asian. What do I care about? And I only care about myself, right? Like Asians stand different South Asian general. But more importantly, and more crucially, right? The way in which we're able to reclaim the narrative comes when we stop accepting and we stop buying into that frame of thought in the first place. That's how we break free of the false consciousness that Ruku talks about. That I think is pretty cool. But yeah. Okay. More importantly, all says that Asian Asians are Asian Asians are not harmed, but Asian Americans are harmed. I'm not really sure I should prioritize Western Asian in the desert house opposed to outside house, given this an active debate. I think the opening opposition for what is worth didn't really justify to you why the actor should do this in this regard. So let's talk about colonialism, rejection, and all that fun stuff. I think the crucial need to recognize here is that we think that the central problem in this debate is that the reason why Asia is falling behind in the global economy is because we think that the only way for us to get success is through Western approval, is through Western legitimacy, and itself is a problem. Because this is the symbolic balance that's exercised by the West upon us. I mean, the only way for us to access success is on their terms alone. Why do we think this is particularly problematic? I think Google gives you a couple of terms here that just wasn't engaged with on opposing opposition, but I think they do so in a bit too late, so that's your What did we tell you specifically? First of all, we say that under that side of the house, where you don't reject these values, chances are you're likely to internalize these Asian values as inferior. Why is that? Think about the kind of power that Hollywood has in determining things like moral norms. For instance, they did so in the Cold War. And what happens here is that Asian values are seen as only legitimate if you have those values. What does this look like? Things like filial piety, for instance, is a more or less Chinese construct that only appeals to Chinese Asian Americans, like Chinese Asians in the status quo. But it probably doesn't really appeal to like Malay Asians or like Indian Asians in the status quo right now. This means that even if you get some degree of representation, it doesn't mean representation is actually good for them, which means that they feel that their values are inferior vis-a-vis not just Western values, but also within Asian values as well. But more importantly, we think that Asia is coming at a turning point in history because we are seeing an increasing wave of liberalism within Asia in the status quo. But this means specifically that, or is that Asians currently have the capacity to choose their future and choose what they want to go on to do in the long term. We think that at the point in which the notion of success continues to be things like going overseas or doing things like going to Princeton or doing things like STEM subjects, for instance, there is no way, like conceivable way for these Asian Asians to be the breakthrough for that kind of constraint. It's only when we are able to reject that standard of legitimacy, we're able to reject what it means to reject the Western definition of who we are as Asians. That's why we're able to reach out and get the kind of success that we want in the long term. I think it's important to note here that Asians oftentimes have dreams and aspirations that they want to achieve but can't do so because of them thinking that they are not able to get that, or because like the Western people just say we can't do it. I think what we're able to do is we're able to reject that like importantly in this talk. At closing government, we don't want to be in Asia we don't want to be in America for Asia. What we want to be is to be in Asia for the world. Thank you.
attend the government with, attend the debate, I invite opposition with. Here.
Without understanding what is the impact of your interaction, that when you reject and make certain things unpopular, you can't just come out and say there will be more discussion about Asian, there will be better representation of Asian, when a lot of people don't see profit because of where you want to invest in these particular things in the first place. Let's look at a few things, because we need to start from top. From value to what is the cost of that value in terms of representation and the identity and cost, and what is the impact that comes out from government. Because we think it's misleading for them to just say, hey, there's inferiority complex, hey, there'll be communication to the east, hey, all of this cost can happen to the benefit, when they don't necessarily think about what is the impact when you fully reject it. Because rejection does not only mean say, hey, you cannot do this, you must do this as well, without thinking what people will actually take action, because there is no incentive for them to just simply talk to the east, for instance. There's no simple intention for them to just cater to pander to the Singaporean who has inferiority complex, to make sure they feel superior about their race compared to other surrounding countries like Malaysia and Indonesia, for instance. There is no reason for them to come out and have this cost in this particular situation where they don't see a profit incentive. But let's talk from the top, because we want to talk about the cultural value. Let's realize that culture is also malleable and is not homogeneous that there is only one Asian identity. Even when your best case scenario, when you talk about Singapore Asian identity in their sense, it's still kind of liberal like Western identity as well. They're not really representing the Chinese cultural aspect that is filial piety and you need to do all of this situation. But let's look at best case scenario, because they want to say that these are also small token representation that does not lead to anything. Just leads to one, the stereotype that OG wanted to talk about, or two, the homogeneous identity that comes out in closing opposition. Let's brush up closing opposition in the first place. We also agree that sure, there may be representation of mainly Chinese in Crazy Rich Asian, but that does not deny other representation in the first place. The terrorist in Black Iron Man, for instance, comes from Middle Eastern. BoJack Horseman season 5 episode 2 goes to not China but Vietnam for spiritual journey because of maybe some cultural similarity. So they still acknowledge other countries around Asia. It's not just that one particular identity that's being portrayed. But is that stereotype really harmful in this particular situation? We need to understand that it's not necessarily true that that stereotype is particular in this situation. Sometimes the reason why they cast is because they need certain form of character trait from those particular from this character at that point in time as well. We don't necessarily think, even under their best case scenario, that they say, hey, you need to get people from the east to come out and give you advice, because one, if most movie does not have like culture is not the integral part of it, then there's no necessary need for you to condemn just because an Asian character comes out and play that particular role if culture is not an integral part. But two, even if it's an integral part, you can still do research and change as it costs. Look at Black Panther, for instance. They do research on African culture and how they adapt those situations to make up a better culture of Wakanda in this particular situation. But let's talk about the kind of idea art that comes out, because art can also be surreal. Bollywood does not portray Indian as just people that keeps on dancing and always have pre-arranged marriage in this particular instance. The extremity of certain culture is also the selling point of the moving point of those stories. Just because entertainment is surreal does not reflect that reality as well. Entertainment is not a biography and is not a documentary that's supposed to take seriously at the end of the day. What does this rejection lead to? Before I go further, show opening.
Entertainment being the core of your case contradicts everything you've talked about in terms of acceptance of culture and acceptance of values. Either it's only entertainment or it's about acceptance of values. Which is it?
It can be both. Just as culture, let's talk about some small stuff from CO. Just because CO wants small local success does not mean you need to reject international actor. You can support both actor for local success and international success. For instance, the cultural value or entertainment value can still coexist. You can still talk about culture and represent certain form of culture, but does not mean that you need to make sure that culture is literally reality in and of itself in Mr. Speaker. Some cultural value needs to be pushed to certain extreme to become because of the entertainment, to make sure that it's approachable, to make sure that it can be a selling point for the prophet, because that is the way that is being shown. But because you show certain form of culture in that particular manner, it also provides incentive for people to look up that culture and to find certain things entertaining. We are amazed by the culture of Africa in Black Panther, even when they push certain extremity of those particular cultural values. So it can coexist in this particular situation. This also leads to the idea that they think about that just because you have one particular cultural value, that you deny every single ideology of every single culture at the end of the day, because those two values can exist. But rejection also leads to, because under their side, their best case scenario is a discourse to the east and to make sure there's integration that happens. As already told you, was never engaged under their side. Then we question, what is the incentive for you to actually engage when you know that this is a non-profitable intent, non-profitable action in the first place? When your own culture, when the majority of your so-called target audience that you bring in black people don't necessarily support that particular African American actor, you don't necessarily think that's you don't necessarily think there's profit for you to bring them up in for this cause. You don't necessarily think it's profit for you to bring them up to be your actor and portray in the first place. So you regress a lot of the action that already happens when you get cultural minority representation. That's why you get Avatar: The Last Airbender, when even though it's a mainly Asian culture, it's being portrayed by the whites all the time, and you messed up every single culture at the end of the day. Sure, you may have some tokenistic value, but adaptability does not mean abandonment in this particular situation, Mr. Speaker. Those small semblance of maybe you know about Filipino or maybe you know about certain Chinese culture also means that you can comment to make sure that it's also adaptable to the current situation at hand. And you don't necessarily think that you can engage because there's no profit incentive for you to create that discourse. There's no profit incentive for you to create or bridge that gap with the East in this particular instance, because there is no profit for you to engage with those particular. You're more likely to create an internal structure within Hollywood to ensure that they just talk about within themselves and create movies within themselves, even if they want to portray this so-called minority culture. But let's simply talk about inferiority complex. One already engaged the fact that if what CG want to talk about is more local success of local company, it's not a zero-sum game. You can support your local actor, support them on whatever, I can't remember, awards in Malaysia or Singapore, but at the same time you can support international actor and support like Oscars, for instance. Those are not like zero-sum. It can still be occurred at the same time. But there might be a reason why you still feel inferior in the first place. If your target is the fact that you want to go to Oscar, it does not mean that Oscar in itself is bad. That is your target and you will work hard towards that target. I don't think that you will face inferiority complex, but because your target is bigger, is that your target will be achievable in a higher level. But the only way for that small person to achieve that target to win the Oscar is that there is a bridge to actually for people in the West to accept you in the first place. You cancel out that bridge because your own people reject any kind of representation that happens in society.
And volunteers for the debate, across the floor.
Thank you.
This is the third time we've met each other in one front of this year.